Hello, boys and girls. We have a very exciting activity planned to introduce and go over our reading skills of the week, which are understanding characters and hyperbole. Let's take a look at our objectives. We are learning to describe a character's thoughts, actions, and words to better understand how they evolve. And evolve just means grow or change. We are also learning to use details from the text to draw inferences about a character. Remember, authors don't always tell you everything you need to know about a character. Sometimes you have to take what you see in the text, what you know in your brain, which is your schema, and put it together to formulate your own understanding. Our last objective is to understand how hyperbole adds to a tall tale. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's first review a bit. Can you recall main characters from the literature that we have read this year and last year? Pause right here. What main characters do you remember from Because of Winn-Dixie? I remember Opal, Miss Franny Black, and Winn-Dixie. What about from the text, My Brother Martin? Who do you remember? Well, I remember a bunch of characters. I remember Christine, Martin, who was referred to as ML, Alfred Daniel, who was referred to as AD. They were all siblings. I also remember Mother Dear, Daddy, and Aunt Ida. What about from Charlotte's Web, the novel that you read in 3rd grade? Who were some main characters from this text? I remember Fern, Charlotte, Wilbur, and how could you forget Templeton? Let's think back to the text after the fall. Who is the main character in this text that we read early on in the year? That's right, Humpty Dumpty was a main character. Well, all of these characters change and evolve through a text. To better understand them and how they change or evolve, we analyze their thoughts and even some feelings. We analyze their words and their actions. By analyzing these things in a character, we can better understand them, especially with regards to how they evolve or grow. Let's take a look at ML, or Martin Luther King Jr., for example. Let's analyze his thoughts, words, and actions to see how he has evolved or grown and changed. Remember, we want to focus on their thoughts, words, and actions to better understand a character. If I'm recalling back to the beginning of the text, I remember that Martin was a regular mischievous kid. His actions of tampering with the piano teacher's chair so the teacher would fall shows this. As we get into the middle of the text, we can take more examples of ML's thoughts, words, or actions. In the middle of the text, we learn that Martin and his family suffered the effects of segregation laws. His thoughts and actions show this. The text stated, "The thought of not playing with the kids because they were white and we were black never entered our minds until the day we went to get our playmates." Do you remember what happened when they went to get their playmates? That's right. They told ML and AD they could no longer play with them because they were Negroes. This here shows how Martin and his family are suffering the effects of segregation laws. Towards the end of the text, Martin had hopes that he could one day show others that segregation laws were wrong. His words here show this. Mother dear, one day I am going to turn this world upside down. Boys and girls, does he really mean he's going to take the globe and hold it upside down? What does this idiom mean? That's right. He's going to make a big change in the world. Now that we have gathered this text evidence describing ML's thoughts, actions, and words, we can analyze each to better understand how he has changed throughout the text. ML, in both the beginning and middle of the text, is just an innocent boy who enjoys playing tricks on others with kids his own age. We know this because he's playing tricks on his piano teacher and wanting to play with the boys up the street. But in the middle of the text, he starts to realize that the world is an imperfect world, one where he cannot be the innocent kid that he wants. And we know this from analyzing the fact that he realized he can't play with the white boys on his street because of the segregation laws. And finally, at the end of the text, ML has matured into someone who wants to make a real difference in the world. And we know this because he tells his mother that one day he's going to turn the world upside down. Great job, boys and girls. We really understood how ML has changed throughout the text. Now, can you help me think back to after the fall, how Humpty Dumpty got back up again? To think about how Humpty has evolved or changed throughout the text. Think back to the beginning of the text. What are some thoughts that Humpty has? What are some words that he says? And what are some actions that he does? Pause right here to brainstorm a few. I remember that in the beginning of the text, Humpty's actions are that he avoids his favorite things that are too high up, such as his favorite cereals and bird watching on the wall. This is because he is scared of heights from falling off the wall. Now that was in the beginning of the text. Let's think back to the middle of the text. What are some of his thoughts, words, and actions? Pause right here to think of that. Well, I remember that in the middle of the text, Humpty settled on making paper airplanes to watch. His paper airplane got stuck on the wall. His thoughts, while going up to retrieve the plane, were that the higher he got up, the more nervous and terrified he felt. He didn't even want to admit it. Still scared of heights here. Now let's think to what he thinks, what he says, and what he does at the end of the text. Pause right here. Well, I remember that at the end, Humpty climbed the wall and overcame his fear of heights. His words were, I didn't look up. I didn't look down. I just kept climbing, one step at a time, until I was no longer afraid. Maybe now you won't think of me as that egg who was famous for falling. Hopefully, you'll remember me as the egg who got back up and learned how to fly. Wow! Let's analyze this, boys and girls, to think about how he has changed throughout the text and evolved. I see here that in both the beginning and the middle of the text, he's terrified of heights. But at the end, he has really persevered to overcome that fear. So Humpty Dumpty changed from a scared and nervous character into a courageous character from the beginning to the end of the text. He persevered through his fears to overcome and hatched into a bird who flies at great heights. If you scholars need one more example, I have included how Wilbur has evolved over the course of Charlotte's Web, the novel. You can go ahead and pause right here to view how Wilbur has changed throughout Charlotte's Web. I've analyzed his thoughts, his words, and his actions in the beginning, middle, and end of the text to show how he has evolved. Why don't you go ahead and pause right now to review this if you're still confused. Great job. One of your activities for today is going to be understanding Stormy from the Tall Tale Stormalong that we read yesterday in class. But before we jump into our reading challenges today, what do you notice about the language that the author of Stormalong uses here? The author says, "The villagers put the baby in a big wheelbarrow and carried him to town." Tell me what you notice. That's right. It seems exaggerated. It seems over the top. It seems unreal. This is a figurative language type that the author has used. Authors sometimes use hyperboles to really exaggerate a story or a statement in a text. It's not meant to be taken literally. It's meant to get a point across and really describe the setting, characters, and plot events in an over-the-top, larger-than-life, exaggerated way. This example here, he missed the goal by a mile. Well, I don't really think soccer players can kick a ball farther than a mile. This is just not meant to be taken literally. But it does explain how the soccer player really missed the goal by a good amount. Let's take a look at some other hyperboles that the author used in Stormalong. One day in the early 1800s, a tidal wave crashed down on the shores of Cape Cod in New England. After the wave had washed back out to sea, the villagers heard deep, bellowing sounds coming from the beach. When they rushed to find out what was going on, they couldn't believe their eyes. A giant baby, 3 fathoms tall, or 18 feet, was crawling across the sound, crying in a voice as loud as a foghorn. The villagers put the baby in a big wheelbarrow and carried him to town. They took him to the meeting house and fed him barrels and barrels of milk. As 10 people patted the baby on the back, the minister said, "What will we name him?" There's a lot of hyperbole or exaggerated statements going on here. The author uses these exaggerated statements to really describe and exaggerate character features, to create that larger-than-life, over-the-top character. The author says that the baby is 18 feet tall and that he had to be carried in a wheelbarrow and fed tons of milk. This is to allow the reader to visualize a giant. The author also compares a baby's voice to a foghorn, which is a device that makes a loud noise that warns sailors of approaching land, to show just how loud and deep the crying of the baby is. Overall, these hyperboles make the story funny and interesting to read. I know that I was giggling, and I really want to know more about this giant baby's life. Hyperboles are very common in tall tales. An element of tall tales is exaggeration, stretched out truth, and hyperboles do just that. It's now your turn, boys and girls. You will apply reading skills and strategies to complete 3 challenges, but You have to hurry. You are on Stormy's boat, the Lady of the Sea, and the octopus has your anchor and 3 tentacles. Completing one challenge means you got 1 tentacle off your anchor. Can you get all 3 tentacles off into double knots by the end of reading class to free your anchor? Let's take a look at the challenges you have to complete to free the boat. Your first challenge is to use the graphic organizer that we are very familiar with to describe Stormy's thoughts, words, and actions in the beginning of the text, the middle of the text, and the end of the text. You will then use this text evidence here, analyze it, and describe how Stormy has evolved or changed throughout the tall tale. Once you've completed this challenge, you can go on to challenge number 2. Challenge number 2 instructs you to read the tall tale Bellina. The text is on your reading assignment Google Slides. There will also be a video of a read aloud of it. Once you've read this text, you will come up with 1 question about the character, Bellina. You'll also answer your own question. Once you've completed this challenge, you will go on to challenge number 3. There are 3 different slides for challenge number 3, but you only have to pick 1. On each of these pages, remember you only pick 1. You will see different excerpts from the tall tale Bellina. You will highlight at least 1 hyperbole in the text here by clicking and dragging the green highlighted squares, or rectangles, I should say. Once you've highlighted 1 example of hyperbole on this page, you will describe to me what it means, or the effect that it gives the reader. Remember, a hyperbole is an exaggerated statement that is not meant to be taken literally. It makes the text larger than life and interesting to read. Once you have completed all 3 challenges, you have successfully saved the boat, the Lady of the Sea, from the octopus. Your code word for today is octopus. Go ahead and type octopus in a private comment to your teacher for a special prize. Enjoy your challenges!